Mic check 1 2 1 2. It's the Y2K collector, and there's something that I'm realizing about the retro game collecting slash reselling market that tells me that I may have been wrong in one of my assumptions. Many of you might have realized or noticed that a lot of the more popular retro video game resellers, at least the ones on YouTube, you might have noticed that they're all kind of doing something similar with their reselling business. And what that something is that they're now starting to accept more games. About a year or two ago, buy lists were very specific. Resellers were only buying certain types of games, and usually they were the big box types of games. Usually they were only buying the Mario games, so it had to be Mario Party, or it had to be a Mario Galaxy. It needed to be a Mario Kart N64. It needed to be Super Mario, right? Everything had to usually be Mario or Wii Sports or you guys know the common ones: Wii Sports Resort and Wii Sports and Zelda and Mario. They really wanted all of the AAA Nintendo games. If it was Mario, Zelda, Kirby, Metroid, the big box stuff, that's the type of stuff that they were going for. And now what I'm seeing is that a lot of the resellers, at least the major ones, and we all know what happens, right? Once major resellers or more popularized resellers or the resellers that you see on YouTube, once they start doing something, everybody that's in the resale space for video games starts to follow suit. And I'm noticing that they're now all buying loose carts, they're buying loose discs, they're buying everything, sports titles, not so popular titles. And I had to ask myself, what is the reason for this? Like, why would resellers who were very specific before now be willing to dabble into all other areas? I mean, you had some resellers that weren't into PlayStation, and now they buy PlayStation. They weren't doing jewel cases, now they do jewel cases. And I mean, I can already see where this is going, right? Like, first it was only Nintendo, now they're doing PlayStation. And then, when Xbox 360 was hot, they expanded into Xbox 360. Everyone kind of craps on Sega. I really don't know why, but I easily see Sega being the next thing. All of a sudden, it's going to be, oh, we give us all your Sega stuff. We want everything Sega. We want we want your Dreamcast stuff. We want your Genesis stuff. And I had to ask myself, what is the reason for this? Like, why are resellers now putting themselves in a position to buy any and everything, including shovelware? And the first thing that comes to my mind, especially when it comes to retro video game reselling, is because of inventory shortages. It has to be the case where these folks are running out of inventory, and or the inventory wells are not as vast as they used to be, and so now they need to expand their scope of games that they're willing to buy and resell. We always ask the question, who would buy a video game on Amazon? Who's buying video games on Amazon? Or who's paying certain amounts of money for certain video games? Or who, would go online and try to buy Mario Kart 6, Mario 64, whatever the case may be. Well, these resellers I don't think these resellers are selling to other resellers. The reason why I say that is because the price point that they're selling these games at, another reseller is not going to buy it. If you look at even someone like a Phoenix Resale, who, from what I understand, he does massive price ups on the games that he sells on Amazon. So you already know that a reseller isn't the one buying those games from him. It has to be the end user. It has to be the person who has the intent to either put the game in their collection or play the game for a certain period of time. And if you're willing to spend Amazon prices on retro games, that tells me that that's not something you're going to be, trading into and out of your collection in a matter of months. 9 times out of 10, a person who's paying a premium on a video game, a retro game, unless they're absolutely clueless, they do have plans on keeping that game in their collection. And so, the only thing that I could think of, like I said, is that there's a shortage of inventory, or inventory is getting low or lower, which would make sense, right? There's only so many copies of these games to go around. There's only so many copies of these games that are staying within circulation. And eventually these games are going to find their forever home. Eventually these games are going to find homes where they're going to be parked for the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years, 7 years. And as more of those games fall out of rotation and as more of those games fall out of circulation, resellers have to find other things worth selling, right? We know their common outlets are going to be eBay, Amazon, but then obviously they also do the retro conventions and things like that, which is a whole other thing, which I'm going to get to in a moment, as far as like the conventions and things like that. But as far as just like the general consumers that these resellers are selling to, I feel like they're starting to max out that customer base in terms of, being able to source games as well as being able to um, sell these games. And resellers can only sell to each other so much to the point where it becomes like, almost inconsequential from a profits and losses standpoint. It doesn't make sense to keep trading the same games amongst yourselves. I mean, at some point, these games do have to find an end user or someone who's going to actually play or slash keep the game in their collection. Now, I want to talk about conventions for a second, because conventions, one, are a major outlet for resellers to sell games, right? We know that. We know that. Two, we know that the gaming convention scene is continuing to have and see success. I think people are still going to gaming conventions. People are still enjoying them. And if you go to a gaming convention, you would think like, wow, the hobby of retro game collecting is busier than ever. Like, man, it's who said, it's not dying down at all. But you got to remember that, especially if you go back to like the 2020 times, you had the retro gaming community, which is the same community you see at the retro gaming conventions, the same community that you still see engaging with retro gaming content. You had that group because that group never left. That group was there before the boom of 2020. They were there during the boom of 2020, and they're still here today after the boom of 2020. But you had the whole nother level of consumer layer, that layer of consumers who were not diehard retro gaming enthusiasts, that consumer who probably hadn't dabbled in retro games in the last 10, 15, 20 years, who were now just getting into it because they had time on their hands, or they just realized that they were feeling nostalgic for Super Mario Brothers 2. That group has moved away. And that's the group that I think did a lot of the consuming between 2020, 2021, and probably the first half of 2022. Once we got out of 2022, going into 2023, the lockdowns were pretty much over. Everyone could go back outside. That group not vanished, but definitely that the tides receded on that for sure. And so when you go to gaming conventions, if you find yourself in that bubble of the diehard community that's always been there, which that's usually the community that goes to those events anyway, you're going to think and feel like, you know what, there hasn't been any change to to the retro market, or there hasn't been any change to retro hype. Retro hype is still booming. Retro hype is still, you know, stronger than it was before. And while I do think that the retro community is still strong, sometimes conventions can be deceiving because you're essentially in an echo chamber of retro gaming enthusiasts. You're around a bunch of people who are just who that's what they like to do, that's what they want to do, and they're going to keep on doing it regardless of what's happening um, in the gaming community. And the reason why I'm talking about the conventions is because we know that conventions are another avenue where a lot of these resellers sell retro games. This is where they go to kind of, I think that's where they kind of go to offload a lot, probably some more of the more expensive stuff, some more of the stuff that would just be harder to sell on like an eBay or Amazon, or probably take really long to sell. And what I also notice is that a lot of the resellers, they'll take these 200, 300, $400 games and they might trade them away. They might take, a $300 game and trade it away for 10, $40 games or $30 games that they can easily flip on their website or whatever and make a much faster profit than just waiting for a really expensive game to sell. And I think that's kind of how they're moving some of the product that they get. But yeah, overall, I would say that perhaps I was wrong about it getting easier for collectors to find retro games, because if resellers are now expanding their reach and they're willing to buy up more than just, the stuff we're used to them buying, and they're willing to go in and buy everything, they're saying, hey, send us everything you got, and they're making it easier for people who want to liquidate their collection and want to sell their collection. They're making it easier for them to just mail their stuff to them. Then that could really pose a problem for collectors. It really could. And it's something that I didn't consider when I was making my video the other day, because I mean, if someone that has a lot of retro video games learns that all they got to do is put it in a box, or if they learn that there's a website that they can go to, look up how much they can get for their games, and just mail them off and get the cash, someone who's just looking to get rid of their games, they might be way more willing to do that than to haggle on Facebook Marketplace, or try and sell it themselves on Mercari, or even take it to GameStop and get a fraction of the price. Why would they do that when they could just go to a Quick Flips, or they can go to a buy list from either Double Mint Games or Chase After the Right Price, and just sell their games there? So that could pose a real problem, because if regular folks who are willing to get rid of their collection, if they no longer see the benefit in taking their collections to stores and selling them there, and they all start to go the, well, I'm just going to do the buy list route, that could pose a real problem for collectors who are hoping to find games out in the wild. And this is just something that I realized once I saw yet another video where I saw a larger reseller or a YouTube reseller mention how they're transforming their business, and they're accepting different types of games, and they're accepting loose cart DS games, and they're accepting, and now the standards are starting to drop, and the systems that people are willing to buy for are starting to expand. And this could pose a threat. This could definitely pose a threat to collectors who are out there hoping to collect things in the wild. Um, and unless you are the type of person, if you're just like a one man show, like just out there collecting, trying to find collections, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough. I definitely see that. I see that making it tougher. I'm not saying it'll be impossible. I'm not saying you can't find deals. I'm not saying nothing is out there, but that's a factor that I don't think I really considered that much once I made the comment about it becoming easier, because now resellers are going to things like Pokemon. So I'm interested to know your thoughts on this, though. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think about this? Do you think the fact that resellers are now accepting and buying up all types of games, do you think that that's going to have a real impact on the games you can find in the wild? That's question number one. And question number two, do you think that the casual consumer, someone who's just looking to get rid of their games, do you think they'll still want to box all of their games up and take them down to a store when they know they could just go to a website, look at a buy list, and just ship their games off and get a check? Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments, and I'll catch you in the next video. It's the Y2K Collector. Take it easy.